Este panel tiene una intención diversa, que es poder discutir con fundaciones que se dedican a promover la inclusión financiera en todo el mundo. En particular estamos hablando de dos fundaciones, la Fundación Interledger y la Fundación Mojaloop. La Fundación Interledger apoya proyectos que tengan un aspecto de inclusión financiera digital en prácticamente, muchas gracias, prácticamente en todo el mundo. Cada año hace convocatoria. Nosotros, como comenté en el panel pasado, hemos sido becarios de la Fundación Interledger y están de lleno comprometidos en esta causa. Entonces, es importante que aquí también conozcamos qué oferta hay en realidad, porque un proyecto que quiera hacer innovación, pues aquí hay un camino de colaboración muy positivo y con mucho potencial. Por otra parte, la Fundación Mojaloop, bueno, para acabar con la Fundación Interledger, tiene una serie de desarrollos, ahorita Chris desarrollará más, muy interesantes, y entre ellos el protocolo Interledger, que es el que implementamos en la Cámara. Por otra parte, la Fundación Mojaloop desarrolló el software que llamamos Mojaloop, que tiene la función de compensar, sobre todo entre diferentes sistemas y redes de sistemas, ¿no? Surgió con esta idea de sistemas de pago móvil que hay en regiones de África, en que hay diferentes compañías y son completamente independientes, no se tocan. Entonces, la idea es cómo hacerlos compatibles para que no sean sistemas autónomos, sino que todos se puedan hablar, como por así decir, una red de redes. Entonces, con esa idea ha promovido proyectos de inclusión financiera del tipo sistemas de pago en regiones de África y de Asia principalmente, y ahorita con la Cámara de Compensación, pues estamos tratando de implementar un proceso Mojaloop, como ya vimos, en México. Entonces, son dos fundaciones clave. Y por último, INFITX, representado aquí por Warren, que espero esté por acá, es una empresa que se dedica a la implementación de procesos de pago, en particular Mojaloop, pero no nada más, y es un aliado clave para este tipo de procesos. Sin más, quisiera ceder la palabra tal vez en un inicio a Chris, si quiere comenzar. Nos va a hablar en inglés. No sé si allá arriba pueden ver el proceso de traducción para que en el auditorio se traduzca al español a través de las bocinas. Está en mute la computadora ahí, por cierto. Y también quienes están en Zoom, si desean escuchar en español, tienen que ir ahí, tiene un botón del lenguaje o de traducción o hay una palabra similar y le indica en español para tener la traducción al español. Chris, por favor, adelante.
Hola. I'm going to not be as cool and interesting as Michael Richards and speak Spanish. I apologize. As I was introduced, my name is Chris. I'm from the Interledger Foundation. The Interledger Foundation is a U.S. nonprofit. We're not that old. We're going to celebrate our 3rd birthday in July, and we've been around really for 4 years total. Basically, we're a nonprofit that looks to fund innovation programs within financial inclusion at the intersection of open technology, open protocols, and financial, really equity as much as inclusion. So basically, we fund programs globally. We funded in over 37 countries, over $11 million in grant funds, including our friends here at People's Production House, People's Clearinghouse. And basically, what we want to do is take the world of open source technology, of protocols and standards, and also of practices, the philosophies of open source, of sharing, of still honoring privacy and security, of taking what you might need and making it into your own context, and take that into this world of financial inclusion through technological. I toured yesterday along with some of the community banks out in rural Mexico yesterday, and something struck me that really was a connection between the work that we and the philosophies that they're trying to build with the community. And that is, if the solutions aren't community driven, aren't local, aren't relevant to the regions and people that need to implement them and the problems that they're trying to solve, then they won't work. And that is where we come from the foundation. We're much more interested in finding people with financial inclusion issues and supporting them with grants, with resources, with engineers, with people to build local solutions for local problems, with the idea that in an open source and a community way that's global, those solutions, those innovations, those creative ideas can be shared and remixed, rebuilt, remade with the local context from the. So something that might work in Mexico can also work in Myanmar or Singapore, but they're going to make changes. They're going to make it local to what they need. And so that really is the spirit of our grant making. I would say, and I want to get to our other guests here in a conversation quickly, but we'll have 2 or 3 more grants this year. And I think a lot of the work that goes on in this room will be highly relevant for those grants and for that work. It's folks like yourself that we're looking to partner with and to build new solutions. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Chris. Muchas gracias a la tecnología que nos permite escucharlo así tan efectivamente. Por otra parte, tenemos aquí a Paula Hunter, que es la directora general de la Fundación Mojaloop. La Fundación Mojaloop, ya la describí, y sobre todo hizo este desarrollo con recursos de la Fundación Gates, que ha permitido, bueno, está por aquí en medio, ¿no? Medio invisible, pero aquí está con nosotros. Paula tiene más de 20 años de experiencia en tecnología de alto nivel, desarrollo de negocios, ha servido como directiva y miembro de la mesa directiva de asociaciones globales de industria, ha trabajado en diferentes procesos tecnológicos involucrando hardware, software y sectores de servicios, y actualmente entonces la directora general de la Fundación Mojaloop. Paula, Paula, no sé si estás por ahí y quisieras platicarnos un poquito de ti y de Mojaloop.
Buenas tardes. Gracias por invitarme. I now must sadly switch to English, so I join Chris on English. As mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Mojaloop Foundation. Our mission is to address financial inclusion through the development and enhancement of the Mojaloop open source project. So we are the stewards of the open source project. We are the conveners of the open source community that maintains, enhances, tests, and extends the Mojaloop core base. And we are delighted to be talking with you here today because we believe the Mojaloop solution can be tailored to meet your needs, but that you can also benefit from ongoing engagement with the Mojaloop community as the project evolves and improves and enhances over time.
Excelente, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Paula. Por otra parte tenemos a Warren, bueno, la empresa INFITX que ya evocamos, es la implementadora más importante de Mojaloop, y aquí tenemos a Warren Carrew, que nos acompaña y que nos va a explicar un poquito al respecto. Adelante, Warren.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this very interesting conference. I represent INFITX. Michael Richards is one of my colleagues, and we have been long-time partners in the Mojaloop space. We are a team of motivated, inclusive financial service experts focusing on enabling equitable financial service outcomes. We do this usually by supporting both fintechs and associations like yourselves that are looking at adopting technologies like Mojaloop or digital financial infrastructure programs to create those type of services that reach down and have real impact in communities. We've been working since 2017 actually with Mojaloop and evolving that across many countries, mainly in Africa, but also in Southeast Asia. And we are very excited to be doing that now as well with yourselves in America.
Muchas gracias, Warren. A ver, no sé si pueden, cuando hable Warren, también poner la traducción para que todos podamos entender. Una primera pregunta es, tal vez, a los tres, muchas gracias por participar, desde una perspectiva de una fundación internacional que trabaja en proyectos en todo el mundo, en realidad. ¿Cuál es el significado de la inclusión financiera real y por qué debería preocuparnos a todos nosotros? Para ustedes, desde una perspectiva global. ¿Cuál es el valor agregado incluso de la inclusión financiera digital? ¿Por qué es una prioridad hoy en día para fundaciones como las que ustedes representan y empresas? Chris.
Well, I mean, I think that why it's important is because, should I wait?
No sé si podemos iniciar la traducción. Aparentemente funciona.
Well, I think financial inclusion is important. I mean, I think it's somewhat self-evident, but as the world grows more digital and interconnected, the ability for people to enact their financial lives gets more complicated, not less. And we've got to figure out ways in which local content can connect to a broader financial life in their community, and import, export, remittances, all kinds of ways in which the digital connectivity is pushing those forward. So as a foundation, we think it's essential that we have nonprofit open source voices that are thinking about how to build that technological ecosystem around what this growing need to be interconnected and financially inclusive. And that's why as a foundation, we've made a commitment to working in a global context because we live in a global financial system, even when that manifests locally.
Que se manifiesta localmente, dice al final. Galia, no se está entendiendo, se entiende la mitad. Creo que es tu conexión, no sé. Si puedes checar eso en lo que... Sí, por favor. Muy bien. Una disculpa a todos. Se escucha cortado y es difícil de entender. Sí, por favor. Muchas gracias, Chris. Paula.
Yes, so we feel that access to digital financial services have a major impact in society's well-being. First of all, there's many citizens that live rurally that have no access to banking or bank branches. And so by simply employing technology on feature phones, not expensive smartphones, but feature phones, gives them access to financial services.
Paula, give us 1 second. I think both translators are talking at the same time.
Okay.
Los dos traductores están hablando al mismo tiempo. Entonces, eso está todavía peor, porque ahora sí ya no entendemos. Sí, por favor, Paula, si quieres, adelante y yo traduzco cualquier cosa.
Shall I proceed?
Sí, adelante, Paula, en inglés.
So as I mentioned, it's critically important that we reach individuals that live rurally and have no access to traditional banking services or branches. So first of all, it's important for us to be able to deploy our technology via simple feature phones, not high-end smartphones. What we find is when we've been talking to banks in various countries, they want to be able to have as much access to the rural population as possible. And in many cases, they do not have good internet connections, but in many cases, they do have mobile cell phone access. And by deploying Mojaloop via the open source model, what we have done is lowered the cost of deploying and operating the Mojaloop solution, so that it can result in lower transaction costs for the citizens. Because every time a citizen wants to transfer money and even go cross-border, there's fees associated with that. And right now, with proprietary systems, those fees are very expensive. So what we want to do is reduce the costs and give people greater access. And then finally, what we want to do is increase interoperability, so that you don't always have to be on the same network or working with the same service provider, that your transactions can flow throughout the financial system in a marketplace. And what that does is brings citizens into the community, into the digital community, and able to leverage the benefits of these financial transactions, just as their other peers may through traditional banking methods.
Excelente. Al principio, antes de que se tradujera, Paula mencionaba que el punto clave es trabajar con las personas que no tienen acceso, no es dar un nuevo servicio nada más, sino dar un servicio que llegue donde no se llega, recurriendo entonces, por ejemplo, no solo a teléfonos inteligentes, sino también a teléfonos feature phones, se dice en inglés, los más sencillos, que tienen mensajitos de texto nada más, por ejemplo, incluso en regiones donde no hay internet o hay una forma deficiente de conectividad. Muchas gracias, Paula. Warren, ¿qué quieres comentar de la pregunta? Pasamos a la siguiente. La pregunta en sí es, ¿cuál crees que es el valor real de la inclusión financiera, el valor de la inclusión financiera real y el valor agregado de la inclusión digital para una empresa como INFITX, que elabora en Asia, en África, y en Sudamérica, en parte, actualmente?
Yes, thank you, Roberto. So yes, you know, the real value is the economic uplift at a personal level that happens from that financial inclusion. Access to equitable financial services makes a difference to every individual in the community and empowers that community to actually build a brighter future for themselves. And we have seen from my experience, my personal experience, more than 20 years in this space, where we started the mobile money services in Africa, that this small change of being able to transact efficiently and be able to send money safely and securely has enabled, you know, incredible growth within communities and created a basis on which other people can build new economic models for the local community. And I think the element of digital in particular, you know, we have financial inclusion, and that inclusion is there are often barriers to that which are algorithmic. You know, people don't have an identity, people don't have a home address, so that inclusion, you know, there are rules and barriers to inclusion. We get past some of those when we can combine it with the digital aspects. Digital brings access, as Paula was saying, not just through the smartphones, which was lovely to see that WhatsApp demo, but that same feature, that same bot capability can be done with, with voice services or with SMS services even. So digital brings that access to people to meet them where they are in their journey. And it allows us to enhance those inclusion algorithms, that we know more about the person, we better understand their identity. We can deal with some of the barriers that we've seen put in place to protect the financial system from bad actors, but have the consequence of leaving people out. We leave it there.
Muchas gracias, Warren. Muy interesante. Déjenme preguntarles, ustedes entonces han trabajado en varios países, en varias regiones, en varios continentes, de hecho. ¿Podrían darnos un ejemplo de una implementación exitosa o un caso que ustedes que tengan en el corazón, que les haya gustado de la implementación de lo que la fundación o la empresa que representan haya realizado en alguna región del mundo, algo que consideren particularmente valioso que nos quieran platicar? Y en ese mismo sentido, una segunda pregunta sería, ¿qué creen que sus fundaciones y empresa implementadora de un software open source aporta o puede aportar a una región como México y Centroamérica? Y digo México y Centroamérica porque tenemos aquí a representantes eminentes de Guatemala y de El Salvador que nos acompañan en este evento y que también podrían tener interés en lo que ustedes realizan en todo el mundo. Adelante, Chris. ¿Empezamos contigo?
Gracias. Sure, it's fine. Well, one thing I'll start is just with the work that we're doing with People's Clearinghouse and seeing how the local context there might spread into Guatemala, El Salvador, other regions. I was really loved and engaged with that panel that you had this morning. If you can start to see if we can get traction and success with this model, we can remix it, we can rebuild it, we can make the local changes that we need, but keep the set, keep the tool. That gets us halfway there. So I'd say that. And another program that we funded is helping citizens in Central America pay their utility bills using our payment rail. So what's it like to create more direct, accessible digital payment for phone, for internet access, for daily utilities? We view Central and South America as a huge opportunity space for us, and we're always looking to find more grantees and more partners. But it is important to say what is common across these global contexts and start to come up with best practices, start to come up with common tooling, and start to come up with a community plan that has those folks engaging so they know what's the state and what they can do and what they need to make special to their local region.
Muchas gracias, Chris. Paula, ¿quieres comentar?
Yes, some of the use cases Chris has already mentioned, and I'll let Warren discuss some as well. But a new one that has become very important is G2P payments, so government to people. And so regardless what country we're in, it's likely that the government wants to disperse money out to citizens, but also to immigrants, refugees, and other potential recipients. So we've been working on a collaborative project with other open source projects to help governments implement G2P payment schemes that allow the government to more efficiently disperse money to its citizens, and for those citizens then to use the other use cases and technologies to pay bills, make a peer-to-peer payment, perhaps doing a merchant payment. But I'll let Warren talk more specifically. But I think all those use cases are relevant to many of the countries that you've mentioned here today.
Y para México y Centroamérica, por ejemplo, Paula, en remesas, en tu experiencia en esta región.
Sorry?
Y para el caso de México y Centroamérica, tu experiencia en esta región, ¿qué opinas en particular?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Okay, I'm going to make it in English. So for the case of Mexico and Central America, do you have a specific opinion on, well, this is a specific case because of remittances and things like that, the role of central banks. Do you have any opinion that you want to share with us in that matter?
Well, yes, as I mentioned, I think the GDP payments could be very important in dispersing funds to citizens within the countries, whether it be government payments or other. In some cases, you're seeing aid agencies in countries wanting to disperse funds. So being able to do bulk payments or to a group of citizens or immigrants or migrants or refugees is all a valid use case in some of the countries that you've mentioned here today.
Muchas gracias. Warren, please.
Yes, and I think you know, we know from some of the services that actually exist in between the USA and Mexico that a large number of the actual transfers coming through are related to aid funding actually coming into Mexico. So they are that relationship and those mechanisms, those actual rails that are put in place, often funded by government organizations to facilitate that transporter remittance. Now, we've been working with a number of partners in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar in particular, the Philippines, Singapore, and some also existing technology providers like Visa, where they have established rails. We're all familiar with that service. And with Mojaloop on the other side of that, actually receiving funds. And we've been able to demonstrate both with BIS and with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. We've worked on programs where we've been able to demonstrate how you can actually do this international remittance service between existing digital rails, using that cross-network provider that Michael Richards was talking about earlier, to convert into local remittances in Myanmar or in the Philippines. Now, I think that's a very exciting project and proof of concept for this. And what we're trying to do here, which is a combination of using Interledger and Mojaloop technologies to facilitate the remittances between the USA and Mexico, is of course even more exciting because of the scale of those actual transfers. One of the things that we as an organization value, though, is not just the ability of that technology is being used, but we're about capacity building and empowerment. So one of the things that we like to think is an impact of our involvement in a program is that the local communities, the local system integrators, the local banks have been empowered with better participation tools. And whether that's to a Mojaloop network for interoperability or for more wider integration and services, we're now in a world of open banking. We're in a world of services. We're in a world of fintechs being able to build services on top of these rails. So I believe that this exercise is building, the People Clearinghouse exercise is building an alternative set of rails on which we will be able to facilitate cheaper transfers, cheaper interactions, whether that's G2P or business, person to business with merchant payments, or the P2P use cases we've been discussing. So I'm looking forward to that longer term impact, actually, that this program will just be the seed of.
Excelente. Permítame preguntarles una última pregunta que puede ser útil para todos nosotros que estamos aquí en el auditorio. Hemos tenido algunas instituciones públicas de México en la mañana. Vamos a tener al Banco de México en un par de horas. Y yo quisiera preguntarles en ese sentido, ¿cuáles son los límites y las oportunidades en materia regulatoria, ¿no?, que han encontrado al implementar o tratar de implementar sistemas de pago en diferentes regiones con sus soluciones respectivas? Y en ese sentido, ¿qué mensaje le darían a la audiencia, perdón, no a la audiencia, sino a las instituciones regulatorias mexicanas, ¿no?, al respecto, ¿no?, respecto a su experiencia previa, oportunidades y dificultades en materia regulatoria para implementar Mojaloop, para concebir Mojaloop y discutirlo con gobiernos de diferentes regiones, para pensar el protocolo Interledger y diferentes desarrollos con wallets, con tecnología exclusivamente digital. ¿Qué límites y oportunidades han visto que sean remarcables a lo largo de su experiencia? Chris, do you want to start?
Well, so one thing, and I'm sure there's people in the room that will disagree with me, engineers and technologists, but sometimes I think that the technology of how to do digital payments or digital wallets, digital accounts, digital money, a lot easier than navigating the regulation. The reality is the technology exists, the technology design exists, the protocols and standards. So in some ways, we want to frame this as this giant technological, when in reality, yes, it's difficult, it's complex, but it really is the regulatory environments that make it immensely more difficult. And so if I say one thing to the regulators, I urge regulators to think about not applying old regulatory solutions to new technology and new ideas. And I don't necessarily have those. I know these are hard, like money laundering or trafficking or fraud are immense, but you can't apply old solutions when the technology is moving so fast. And so what I want to call for in different regions or internationally, how do regulators think about how you actually start thinking ahead in technology, in civic tech, in government, and there's a lot of future testing, right? You've got to look down the road to see what's going to happen, what's going to get needed. I think the regulators need to take looking mentality and then look backwards to see how they might apply that. I think somewhat better with the technology, even though that's always going to be a problem. The other thing I'd say, start small. One thing is eliminate variables. So one thing I like about this work with People's Clearinghouse is it's direct. It's not all currencies. It's not all regions. It's not all things. Eliminate variables and start with management, and that will help bring the regulators and government along as well once they see those proof of concepts. And then you can add complexities. But I think for people doing the work that we're all doing in this is the main move, not technology.
Wow, muchas gracias, Chris. Paula, now you have to compete with Chris' comment. I'm sorry.
No problem. So we have found that regulators in many countries all over the world are very concerned about preserving their sovereignty. And it goes beyond data sovereignty. So first of all, for Mojaloop, we offer the ability to deploy in the cloud or on-prem, because we know that data sovereignty is very important. But your country's infrastructure is also very important. And so what we're trying to allow you to do is reduce your dependency on proprietary solutions and have greater control over the systems that you employ in your country. It also allows you, through this open source development model, to collaborate with a worldwide community of experts that test, maintain, and enhance the Mojaloop software. So you get to tap into that benefit without having to write a check to a vendor for that type of feature work or functionality or testing or enhancement. You have greater control over your country's infrastructure. You have influence over the roadmap of the open source project, and you are welcome to participate in the open source community. This open source development model has been around for 20 plus years. We leverage best practices in software development, security, testing, and performance. And what we ensure you have is not only data, but your infrastructure sovereignty as you take more control over your implementation and your solution for your citizens.
Muchísimas gracias, Paula. Muchísimas gracias. Warren, ¿quieres concluir también?
Yes, thank you. So I think it's been a big learning for us that over the last 20 years, what regulation can do and what regulation can prevent happening. In 2005, when M-Pesa and mobile money started in Africa, you know, there was a lot of persuasion that went into talking to the regulators, to actually taking them on that journey with us. And I think that is one of the key learnings. When they've enabled mobile money, the GSMA report came out early last week. Mobile money is now doing more than $1.2 trillion worth of transfers a year. That is a significant impact on the communities, on facilitating financial inclusion. So regulators, we involved them early in those conversations. We spoke to them for 2 years before the service was allowed to go live. So I think taking regulators along with you is very important. I agree with what all the other panelists have said, what Chris said, what Paula said. You know, there are real concerns, but there are also better ways of working. Regulators have a great history of collaboration. So it was often the case that, you know, we've spoken to the Federal Reserve in the US, we spoke to the FSA and the Bank of England here in the UK, where I'm based at the moment. We spoke to the Kenyan government. We spoke to all these entities. We've been speaking to them about faster payments now and real-time payments. And we're seeing changes. The regulators are changing. In El Salvador, there's regulation for special purpose accounts at the central bank. That's true in the USA and UK now as well as several other countries. So take the regulators with you, and the regulators are creating the sandboxes and spaces for the new technologies to be tried out. But to the regulators, I also say, be bold with that. Take a chance on the people who are presenting the new ideas on how to deliver the financial services, on the alternatives. Don't be held back by the lobby groups from established financial service providers. They have a role to play, but sometimes the lobbyists are lobbying to protect their patch. It is our experience that actually by facilitating greater financial inclusion and greater service, ultimately that means there's more transactions, there's more interactions, there's more money flowing through the system, having greater positive impact. So take a chance on us as the future in a controlled and managed way. And I think that to the technologists and the fintechs that are trying to change the world, the regulators are human beings. You need to get out there and talk to them and discuss and understand the challenges and risks they're facing. And then, you know, we can work together to actually get the change and the impact we're all hoping to have.
Fantástico. Muchísimas gracias a los tres panelistas, Chris, Paula, Warren, por su tiempo, por sus palabras. Los invitamos a descubrir la Fundación Interledger. La página, ponen Interledger y les va a aparecer luego. Tienen muchos programas, acaban de lanzar un programa incluso para arte relacionado con el futuro del dinero, las nuevas formas del dinero para artistas y muchos proyectos para quienes se dedican a la inclusión financiera. También los invitamos a descubrir la Fundación Mojaloop, poniendo Mojaloop en Moja como moja y Loop con dos O's, como un círculo en su buscador, para descubrir qué ofrecen.